investor, not financial advice.
SpaceX just completed its 100th mission of 2026, and it is only August. The milestone arrived on a Falcon 9 flight from California, carrying 24 Starlink satellites. The first stage, booster B-1097, then landed on the drone ship Of Course I Still Love You, after its 12th mission. That sounds like another successful launch. For investors, the more important question is what the number proves. SpaceX is no longer operating rockets like rare national projects. It is operating a transportation network in which flight rate, reuse, manufacturing, launch sites, recovery ships, and an internal satellite customer all reinforce one another. But round numbers can also mislead. 100 launches do not automatically mean 100 customer payments, record profit, or finished Starship economics. So today, we're separating the milestone from the hype. What does the cadence tell us? Where is the economic advantage? And which numbers have to improve before this launch machine deserves a higher valuation? Start with the cadence. Contemporary reporting counted this as SpaceX's 100th mission of the year and the 97th Falcon 9 mission. Reaching 100 missions by August 19th means the company averaged one mission every 2.3 days. A simple straight-line annualization would be about 158 missions. That is not guidance, and it is not a prediction. Launches move with weather, range availability, payload readiness, and mission mix. It is simply a scale detector. SpaceX completed 138 missions in 2024 and 170 in 2025. The company has now crossed 100 annual missions for a third consecutive year. Just days before the milestone, two Falcon 9 rockets launched only 38 minutes apart from different coasts. That detail matters because high cadence is not one rocket flying repeatedly from one pad. It is a network problem. Separate ranges, separate ground teams, separate drone ships, separate payload campaigns, and a supply chain able to keep second stages and fairings moving. The operating system is the asset. The rocket is only its most visible component. The 12th flight of booster B-1097 shows why reuse matters. But the useful lesson is more precise than saying the rocket is free. It is not. Reusable boosters still require inspection, transport, refurbishment, propellant, range support, recovery operations, and capital equipment. Falcon 9 also expends its second stage. SpaceX's prospectus explains that boosters, fairings, and Merlin engines are reusable assets that are depreciated through cost of revenue, while second stages are recorded to cost when flown. In other words, reuse changes the cost structure. It does not erase cost. The company says reusability lowers cost per kilogram by limiting how much new hardware must be manufactured for every mission. It also enables more launches because recovered vehicles can fly again after refurbishment. Those two effects reinforce each other. More flights spread fixed launch infrastructure across more missions. More recovered hardware reduces the manufacturing burden per mission. And more operational data can shorten the path to the next flight. The investor question is not how spectacular one landing looks. It is how reliably the fleet can repeat the launch, recovery, inspection, and re-flight cycle while protecting mission success. Now look at who is buying most of this capacity. 74 of SpaceX's first 100 missions in 2026 were devoted to Starlink. That means nearly 3 out of every 4 missions serve the company's own constellation. This is the flywheel. SpaceX creates launch supply. Then Starlink creates recurring demand for that supply. Launches place more satellites and more network capacity into orbit. That capacity supports more subscribers and enterprise services. Connectivity revenue can then help fund satellites, terminals, spectrum, launch infrastructure, and the next generation of rockets. The benefit is strategic even when an internal launch is not recorded, like an outside customer launch. SpaceX's filings explicitly distinguish customer missions from internal missions, and they warn that the company's own businesses absorb much of the growth in launch capacity. So do not multiply 100 missions by a public Falcon 9 price and call the result revenue. The better measure is whether internal launches create productive assets, network capacity, service coverage, resilience, and, ultimately, cash flow. When 3/4 of the manifest belongs to Starlink, launch cadence and connectivity economics become inseparable. This milestone also raises the bar for Starship. SpaceX says fully and rapidly reusable Starship is intended to carry far more mass at lower marginal cost and eventually support multiple launches per day. But Falcon is already a mature, high-cadence system with hundreds of flights, established pads, recovery procedures, and a deep record of vehicle reflights. Starship does not only have to produce dramatic test flights, it has to become a better logistics platform. The company's own prospectus identifies the proof points: payload delivery, high launch cadence, reusability, in-orbit propellant transfer, and the infrastructure required to deploy next-generation Starlink, mobile connectivity, lunar systems, and orbital AI compute. Delays in any of those areas could slow the growth strategy. This is why Falcon's 100-mission year is both bullish and demanding. It proves SpaceX can industrialize one launch architecture. It also establishes the reliability and throughput that the next architecture must exceed before the promised cost curve becomes real. A successful Starship test is progress. A repeatable launch, recovery, inspection, and reflight loop is the business model. Competitors can buy engines, build rockets, launch satellites, or sell broadband. The harder challenge is reproducing the entire loop at once. SpaceX manufactures launch vehicles, operates multiple launch sites, recovers boosters at sea and on land, builds satellites, sells connectivity, develops user terminals, and controls the scheduling of a large internal payload pipeline. Its IPO material said that, as of March 31st, the company had completed approximately 650 launches, and that 95% of vehicle flights were reflights. The same materials said Falcon had carried more than 80% of global mass to orbit since 2023. Those figures are company claims filed with the SEC, and they show the scale of the lead. But the moat should not be treated as permanent. Regulators can constrain cadence. Launch failures can stop a fleet. Recovery hardware and second stages still cost money. Competitors can improve, and Starlink must keep converting orbital capacity into profitable customer demand. The durable advantage is not a single patent or booster. It is the rate at which the whole system learns, recovers, and flies again. After the 100th mission, I would watch 5 numbers. First, missions per month, separated into customer and internal launches. That shows both outside demand and the rate at which SpaceX is investing in its own network. Second, booster reflights and turnaround time, because reuse only creates leverage when vehicles return safely and re-enter the schedule efficiently. Third, mission success and recovery reliability. Cadence without reliability destroys value. Fourth, Starlink capacity, subscribers, average revenue per subscriber, and connectivity segment margins. Those figures show whether internal launches are producing attractive economic assets rather than only a larger constellation. Fifth, Starship payload delivery and true reflight cadence. Not a target date, not a rendering, and not one successful test. Repeated payload missions followed by recovery and reuse. These numbers also prevent double counting. A Starlink launch can strengthen connectivity, but it should not simultaneously be treated as full external launch revenue. A recovered booster can lower manufacturing demand, but it still carries inspection and depreciation. The best bull case is operational. More useful capacity, delivered reliably, with improving unit economics and cash generation. So what does SpaceX's 100th mission of 2026 really mean? It is evidence that reusable orbital launch has become repeatable infrastructure. One mission every few days requires much more than a good rocket. It requires a fleet, factories, pads, ranges, ships, software, regulators, customers, and teams that operate as one system. The 74 Starlink missions reveal the second half of the strategy. SpaceX is not waiting for enough outside payloads to fill its capacity. It is building the demand through a global communications network. That combination can create a powerful flywheel. But investors should stay disciplined. Internal launches are investment, not automatic revenue. Reuse lowers costs, but does not eliminate them. And Falcon's success does not prove Starship's future economics. The next signal is whether cadence keeps rising, while reliability, connectivity margins, and cash generation improve, and whether Starship begins to repeat the operational loop Falcon has already demonstrated. The 100th launch is not the finish line. It is proof that SpaceX knows how to build a launch machine. Subscribe for the operating data behind the headlines. This is SpaceXInvestor.